So I want to talk about long layovers today. Just that idea of just being on the plane for what seems like forever, and then having a layover that's super long and make you nervous or keep you from even wanting to fly, um, or all of those things. I know sometimes we're trying to find the best flight, and it might mean that we have a layover that's 8 hours long, or sometimes it's an overnight layover even. And so there's a lot of questions that we have to ask ourselves as to whether or not we want to do that we're up to it. And I know for me, the older I get, it used to be when I was younger, in my 20s, 30s, even 40s, I was like, no problem, I can spend the night in an airport, I can sleep anywhere. I was up to the task. But I've noticed in the last few years, as I get into my 50s, that my body just is not, like it happens with all of us, right? It's not the same. Things are harder on my body now. And so now I have to ask these questions of, is a long layover what I want to do? But sometimes it's inevitable, or sometimes I need to do it in order to get the flight that I want. And if that's the case for you, what do we do? What do we do when we have a long layover? Do we need to say absolutely not, not for me? Or do we say, okay, I could do it, but maybe there's these questions to ask? And for me, what I have to ask is, how can I take care of myself in the process? Do I think I can do that well? Because I used to not even think about that. I used to just be like, I can push through anything and make it work. And now I step back and ask myself a little bit more questions about, how can I care for my own body in the process of all of this? So that's what I'm going to cover today. I don't know, I didn't count them, like five, six, seven ideas for you if you do have a long layover and you want to take care of yourself well, if you can't avoid it. That happened to me recently on my last trip overseas. I ended up needing to be in the London airport, in Heathrow for I think that it ended up being 12 or 13 hours. It was a long time. So that's where this idea came to me of, I need to talk about this because I've learned a lot in my 13 hours in the airport, right? So I am Dawn Pick Benson. I am a self-discovery travel coach. I work largely with women who are in the middle of big life change. They've been divorced, empty nesters, a career change or potential retirement. People who are in that point in life where we're asking questions, we're asking big questions of ourselves. And what does life look like after this, in the midst of this change? How can I reimagine what maybe this new future looks like for me? That's my sweet spot. Those are the women I love to work with. I have group programs and individual coaching programs. I'm doing a retreat in Montenegro in September. um, so that is what I do. That is who I am. And I've also been traveling for decades. I have been to, I think, 50, I've actually lost count, 50 something countries by now. So I have to have lots of experience here. So let's dive in. Number one important thing is hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Um, Used to not worry about this so much. And I also know that there's this huge temptation not to do this, because who wants to have to pee in the airport, in the airplane bathroom a million times, or have to get out into the aisle, like if you have a window seat and you have to get out into the aisle to ask to go to the bathroom every single time you got to go. Or in the airport, you might not be love the idea of public bathrooms. So that often sometimes can keep us from hydrating well, because we think, I don't want to have to keep having to go to the bathroom. So I do a couple of things that make this less worrisome for me. One is that I always ask for an aisle seat now, because I actually do have a funny story of trying to like climb over a person who was dead asleep in the airplane, and I really had to go to the bathroom and I couldn't wake them up. So I want you to be able to avoid that if possible. So I love window seats. I love being able to see where I'm going, but I've had to, as I've gotten older, I've had to decide, okay, hydration is super important. And I could, you know, I could tell you a bunch of reasons for that. You could Google it also, but our bodies tend to get dehydrated on flights and in airports, et cetera, and in that process. So it's almost like you need to double the amount of water that you're drinking. So what I do is I make sure that I always have a bottle of water with me. I often carry an empty bottle so I can fill it whenever possible, or whenever the flight attendant comes down the aisle offering water. I always take it. Even if they give me a cup of it, I dump it into my water bottle that I keep in uh in the front of my seat, and I just keep filling it up so that I always have water on that flight and don't have to worry about it. I also have learned hydration tablets are amazing. So that could be your friend as well. I always take at least one or two of those on my trip. You can find those at your grocery store, at almost anywhere you can find basically hydration tablets. And sometimes they come in tablets. I actually really like the packets because the packets are easy to dump into my water bottle, and the tablets you often have to like break in half, and then they end up crumbling everywhere. So the packets are actually what I love the most for actual airplane travel. But make sure you hydrate. And on the flip side of that, I would say step away from the booze. Now, this is kind of hard on an international flight, or at least it is for me, because it's free. So I'm like, I don't like I don't like passing up on the free wine or the free gin and tonics. Um, that's a harder thing for me. So if I do decide I'm going to have some alcohol, I just know that I need to double up on the water or have some extra hydration tablets. I have to pay attention to that balance, right? And the best thing really is to not drink at all on the flight. Um, but I have to be realistic too. Like sometimes I just really want a glass of wine. So like you have to know your body and know if you're feeling dehydrated or not, and pay attention to it. So honestly, that's weirdly the one of the hardest ones for me. It might be for you too if you're not, it also might be the easiest thing in the world and you just prefer to have, water and juice or soda. Although soda can also dehydrate us a little bit, so be careful there. Um, okay, moving on. Um, so let's get into oh, one more thing. I was going to start with the things you need on the plane, and then we'll go into um, the actual layover of being in the airport. Compression socks, those are your friend. You are, often if you have a long layover, it means you have a series of flights. That is good for your circulation. Now, I avoided compression socks for years because they're ugly, or at least they were ugly, and I didn't want to wear them. Or if you're flying in the summer and you want to wear sandals, I mean, who wants socks, right? I have found ones that are footless. You'll have to check. There are reasons why you choose certain kinds of compression socks, and I'm not a doctor, so you do want to check with your own doctor as to which ones are best for you. But I do know that footless ones exist. So if you're into, I want to wear my flip flops on the plane or sandals, and it's warm out, you actually still could wear compression socks if you get those kind, but just check with your doctor to choose the right ones. But there also are much cuter compression socks than there used to be. So those help us to keep our circulation when we're sitting for a long time, etc. So the combination of those and just getting up and walking around. So which leads me to the next one. I've lost track of what number I'm on, but it's okay. Follow me. The next one is walking. And this is really while you're on the plane, but also when you get off of the plane. It's easy for us to just, especially on long haul flights, we sleep a lot of the time, but it really is important to get up and get your circulation moving to avoid, as you get older, issues with blood clotting and things like that. And it also is just good for our bodies, for our backs, for, our muscles, stretch yourself out. So when you have a long layover, it's going to be really important that you don't just sit on your ass in the airport and drink booze, basically, because some people do this. Um, but get up and walk around. Even if you're exhausted, it's good for you. And then I'm going to give you a few examples or a little bit I learned from my layover in Heathrow. And for anyone who is laying over in Heathrow, The really cool thing about London is that you actually can easily get out of the airport. And if you have a layover that I think, I know they have a suggested amount of time. I can't remember if it's 6 or 8 hours, but use their suggested amount. But if you have a layover, I'm sure if it's 8 hours, it's enough. You can leave the airport and you can go into the city. There's a tube, there's the tube right there in the airport, and you can just get on it and it takes you downtown. I've done that before and it's been amazing. My little trick, if you've never been to London and you're not really sure how to do everything and you're a little bit nervous, the first time I ever did that, I took the tube into downtown. Or into the main part of London. Um, Not remembering the station now, but maybe Piccadilly. Um, and I got a ticket for hop on, hop off bus, which is everywhere. And that bus took me around the city, and I could just get on it and get off whenever something was super interesting to me. And it allowed me to get a really good bird's eye view of the city because I hadn't been there before and didn't really know what I wanted to see. It also allowed me to see things a lot faster. So I could really get a tour of the city, an entire tour, and then be able to get back to the airport and be on my way. So the first time I had a long layover in London, I did that and it was amazing. The second time I had a long layover, which is the most recent, I actually chose not to go outside of the airport, and I kind of wish that I had, but I didn't sleep well on the plane. I was exhausted and I really wanted to take a nap. And I also knew that I felt like my brain wasn't functioning on all cylinders at that point in time. Um, and that I wasn't sure that I would enjoy going out of the airport. So you kind of do have to check in with yourself, and know, am I up for this or am I not up for this? And I also had a backpack that was kind of heavy, and I didn't know if I wanted to walk around with it all day. And I could have left it in a locker, but then I'd have to get back and find the right locker. And, there's logistical things to consider. And I just decided I was too tired to deal with that this time. And so I decided to stay in the international section of the airport. And I ended up, my flight got delayed. I think I ended up being there 13 hours. And I do know now, I wish I had at least gone out for a little while, because um, the gates that you end up being in when you're waiting for another international flight, it was so jam packed full of people. There was almost nowhere to sit. It was not calming to me. So, um, just something to be aware of, that that's not the best terminal in the world to hang out in for 13 hours. There's not a lot to do, and there's not a lot of space, and there's stuff to eat. But when I was there, it was so busy there was hardly anywhere to sit to even to eat for a restaurant. So um, that's something to consider for sure. And what I ended up doing, so that was there's the walking. My other tip for you was get out of the airport if you can. There are ways that you can do this, and often it is helpful to do your research ahead of time on these kind of things as well, to know which airport you're going, like to know that London you can easily get out. I also know that if you fly into Istanbul, I've done this before with Turkish Airlines, you'll have to double check me if it's still the case. But the last time I flew through Istanbul, Turkish Airlines specifically actually offers a free tour of Istanbul. If you are in Istanbul, if you have a layover that's long enough, they will offer you to go on either, you can choose a couple of things. There's like a sightseeing tour. There's also a boat, like a Bosporus tour. So you just have to go sign up for it, and they take care of getting you there and getting you back. You can leave your luggage there. It's actually super amazing. It is a great deal and a great way to see Istanbul in, a few hours. So that's another reason I say get out of the airport and look ahead of time. The same thing, I flew through Qatar one time, and they did the same. They offered a tour. I don't think it was free, but it was really quite a reasonable price. And if you had a layover for a certain number of hours, they'd look at your boarding card and okay it. And I got a tour of of the city for, I think I had a 2, 3 hour tour of the city, um, instead of just sitting in the airport all the time on my butt. And that was amazing because it was a country I probably would have never seen otherwise. So look into that wherever your layover is. Sometimes there are options for you to get out of the airport easily where you don't have to have a visa. You go out, go on one of these tours, and then you can come back. So get out of the airport if you can. That's a tip that I think is good for a long layover. Um, if you are stuck in the airport, like I was in London, or decided to be, and regretted it later, um, think about using the clubs in airport clubs. I think that's the right word to use. Like if you're a part of United Club, or in London, there were, what I found out is there were different clubs that you could pay a certain amount of money to go in there and spend an hour or the afternoon. They all have their own rules. But I ended up deciding it was worth it because the airport was so crowded and I just wanted a seat. I wanted somewhere to be able to sit down and fall asleep if I wanted to. And often those airport clubs almost always have food as well. So what's included the price of you going in is also usually food and sometimes a free drink or two. So, which also makes it a problem with the no drinking thing, because again, you're getting drinks that are kind of free. But anyways, it was a good deal for me. I think I paid £50 maybe to get into it, which wasn't super cheap. But when you add in the fact that I got a free meal while I was there, or you could have maybe even more than a meal while you were there and a drink, it was worth it to me, and a space to actually sit and fall asleep if I wanted to, rest, easy place to plug your phone in. So those places are gold. And they are, if you add it up in your mind, they're often worth the money or worth your sanity in the process, right? And something that also for long layovers that I say is just strike up a conversation. Like, this is super simple, um and not uh maybe it doesn't always work, but it is a way of passing the time. So what happened to me when I paid to go into the airport club is I needed to do a little work on my laptop. So I ended up at this space where I had plugged in my laptop. I was able to charge it, and then got myself something to drink and some food. And as I sat there, there was a guy across from me who had just come back from New Zealand. And we ended up having the most amazing conversation about his trip to New Zealand. I was going into Portugal and then Montenegro and Kosovo, and he was fascinated by why I had chosen those locations. And so we shared like travel tips, pictures, all of that. And it made my time fly. I was so glad that I paid for that airport club, because it also made my time fly faster because I was just having an interesting conversation with the person next to me. And you never know how those things turn out, or, you've made a new friend. So those are my ideas. Hydrate, stay away from the booze, make sure that you're walking, get out of the airport if you can, use airport clubs, compression socks, and strike up a conversation. So 7. Those are my 7 tips for a long layover, especially as we get older and as we're women needing to take care of yourselves. And so maybe that's my 8th tip, is to listen to your body, to listen to how you can best take care of yourself. So for like me in the last London airport, I thought the best way to take care of myself was maybe not to have the stress of going into a big city and having to deal with my back. So I was trying to take care of myself. That's why I chose the airport club, to take care of myself. So really that's what you need to be paying attention to on your long layovers, is how can I best take care of myself? If a free tour into the city sounds exciting and is good for my soul, then I do that. If I just feel like I need to hunker down, choose what works best for you and what works best for your body. So again, I'm Dawn Pick Benson, self-discovery travel coach, and I hope this was helpful.